It was August the 20th, 1941. I'm sorry. It was August the 20th, 1955. And I could hear the whistle blow. Woo, woo. And the conductor say,
"All aboard!"
We made it to the train station. And Emmett says to me, "Here, Mama, take my watch." He said, "I won't need it where I'm going." And I said, "Well, Emmett, what about the ring?" The ring was his father's. It was silver, and it was initialed LT. And so Emmett said, "Mama, I want to show this off to the boys." So he proceeded up to the train. And I said, "Wait a minute, Emmett, you didn't even give your mother a kiss." And so Emmett looked at me as if to scold me, and he said, and I thought, why did I say something so silly? Little did I know that would be the last time that I saw my son alive. I tried to prepare Emmett for Mississippi, the ways of Mississippi. I told him, I said, don't look them in the eye. And if a white woman passed by you, just hold your head down. I said, and if you pass by him on the street, on the sidewalk, just step aside. And I said, and if you need to beg for forgiveness, I said, get on your knees and beg for forgiveness. I wanted him to understand that the ways of the South was different from Illinois. And he assured me that he understood. It was November the 23rd, 1921, when I was born, to John and Elma Carson. I was only 2 years old when my parents decided that they got tired of the ways of the South. And so they moved me to Illinois. And in Illinois, it was still prejudice, racism, but it wasn't bad as the South. Mom and Dad, they moved to a little town called Argo, Mississippi. You know, that's where they make like the K-roll syrup and the Argo starch. And a lot of people from the South came north. So many people came that we called it Little Mississippi. Because Mama, she would welcome people in, she would give them jobs, and we were one of the only people who had a telephone. And so she would leave a key under the mat, and people would come in and use a telephone and leave 5 cents. When I was about 12 years old, Mom and Daddy divorced. Well, I put all my energy, everything I had, into my schoolwork. You see, Mama taught me about my education, but she didn't prepare me for life. So, after I put all myself into this schoolwork, a lot of girls at age 16, they dropped out of school and got married, but not me. I didn't want to drop out of school. I wanted to graduate. And I was so smart that I made it on the honor roll. And I was also one of the first black students to graduate from Argyle Community High School. When I was about 19, I got married. But at 18, I met this man called Lewis. His name is Lewis Teal. And I was so impressed with him because he integrated the drugstore. He asked me, he said, do you want a banana split? And I looked at him and said, we gonna split a banana? I told you Mama didn't prepare me for life. But anyway, he assured me that I would have my own banana split. And so we sat there right inside the drugstore. But people was looking and they was passing by, so they started to come in too, all the black people. They came in too. And I guess the drugstore owner didn't know what to do, but Emmett was opening the door and letting them in. I was so scared I thought that Mama was gonna come and She didn't let me go to the movies. She didn't let me go to parties. So, Emmett, we had a little boy named Emmett, but Mama took me to the hospital because his daddy, Lewis, he didn't seem to be much of a family man. So Mama took me to the hospital, and I'm there on the operating table, and I asked the doctor, I said, "Where is the baby coming out?" I told you Mama didn't prepare me for life. And he said, "Well, the baby is coming out the same way the baby came in. I was so embarrassed that the doctor knew what I had done to get a baby. Because all Mama ever told me was that if you go around kissing boys, she said, you're going to come up in the family way. So I thought that's how I got babies. But anyway, it was time for the baby to be born. And he was a breech baby. You know, when the baby's not coming out right. And so they took forceps to bring him out. And when they used the forceps, they kind of messed him up, kind of disfigured his face a little bit. But the cord, his umbilical cord, was wrapped around his legs, wrapped around his arm, his neck. He was so swollen. He was so swollen that the doctor said that he needed to be in an institution. Now, Elma Carson, she wasn't having that. And I knew I didn't want my baby to be in an institution. So, we took the baby home. But before we took him home, while I was there in the hospital, and I looked at him, and I was so scared because it frightened me. I frightened him so that it startled him, and he began to cry. And I put him up to my chest to let him know how much I loved him. And then when we took him home, and he was a sickly baby. But Mama, Irma Carson, 5'3", she wasn't going to have him in an institution, and she was going to make sure that this baby was going to be okay. And this baby was okay. God blessed him and healed him. But when he became 5 years old, he was stricken with polio. And when he was stricken with polio, it left him with a speech problem. He stuttered really bad. And so I learned something. If he whistled, then he could get his words out better. So we taught him that little trick. And we also had a nickname for him called Bobo. So, as I said, I never wanted Emmett to get on that train and go to Mississippi because I knew how cruel it could be, but I didn't want people to think I was smothering him. And I had this like emptiness, or I just felt so frightened. So Emmett had called me once while he was there within those 8 days, and he also sent me a letter. And Jean and I, Mobley, we later got married, but Jean was like a father to him because his daddy was abusive to me, and so the judge told him he either go to the military or he go to jail, so he chose the military, and that's where he was killed. So Jean and I were supposed to go on a trip to Nebraska to visit some family. But I was just too sick. I just didn't feel right because my boy was still gone. So about 8 days into his vacation, I got a phone call. And the phone call said Emmett was missing. They said that 2 men came in the middle of the night and abducted him. They said that he was flirting with a white woman. I just felt so sick inside. That's my only son, and I was hoping they'd be able to find him, and so I called all that I could call that could help me. 3 days later, I got another call. they found Emmett. They found him with a 75-pound cotton gin attached to him and barbed wire all around his neck. That hurt me so bad, I was in so much pain. He could only be identified by the silver ring that was his daddy, by Uncle Mose. Well, the sheriff didn't want people to know, so the sheriff said, I want that body in the ground before sundown. But I was determined that Mississippi wasn't going to have my son's body. So I called different people that I could to help me. And they helped me get Emmett back to Illinois. But the thing was, they had to sign a piece of paper stating not to open it, not to open the casket. It cost me $3,300. That was a year's wages to bring him home. And I told the funeral home director, I said, I'm going to pay you, and if I don't, somebody else will. So anyway, the train came up. When the train came, they had to roll me in a wheelchair. And I saw this big old box. And the box was as big as a train car, it looked to me. And so it was sealed, and I told the funeral home director, Mr. Rayner, I said, you gotta open the box. He said, but I can't, Miss Mamie, it's a seal on it. I signed papers. In order for this not to be open, it must be buried intact. So I said to him, do you have a hammer? He said, yes, Miss Mamie, I have a hammer. I said, give it to me, I'll open it. And so I said, I dare anybody to come and get me for wanting to identify my son's body. So he said, if you that determined, Miss Mamie, he said, I'll open the box. So the funeral home director, he opened the box. And I said, help me on my knees. And I cried out to God. And I said, oh Lord, take my soul. I said, tell me what to do and give me strength to do it. And I went to the casket, to the box, went to the box. And I had to examine his feet first in order to give me strength to go to his head. So I looked at his feet, looked at his ankles, and he had perfect ankles because I never wanted him to have mine because it was all fat and bad. I looked at his legs, and his knees was like mine. Then I moved swiftly through his private because Emmett wouldn't want it. He wouldn't want me, Bubba wouldn't want me to look at his private. So I moved on up, and his body was intact. He wasn't beaten and battered, but he was so swollen. And I forgot to tell you, his body smelled so bad that you could smell it 2 blocks away or more. The stench was bad. It was worse than a hog in a hog farm. And so I moved on up to his chest. I looked for the little curl part on his ear, but it wasn't there. His nose looked like it was all messed up, and one of his eyes was out. Then I looked at his head, and it just looked like the top part was separated. But Gene noticed his haircut because he was a barber. He said, I know that haircut anywhere. And I said, yes, this is my son Emmett. This is Bobo. And so he was laid in state for 4 days. Over 100,000 people came to view his body. just about every fifth person or so, they were getting sick. The nurse had to come. They had to carry them out. And it was so hard for me. But you know what? I wanted the world.
Amen.
I wanted the nation to see what they'd done to my son.
Yes.
I let the Jet magazines come in.
Yes.
I let him have an open casket.
Yes.
And I wanted him to be buried here in Illinois. And it changed my life. And it changed a lot of people's life. And it started a movement.
Yes.
A movement for things to happen. For them to take notice of what was going on in Mississippi.
Yes, ma'am.
I always thought the problems of the South was their problem, because I was up north. But I realized that day, it's the world's problem. It's the whole nation's problem.
Yes, ma'am.
My son was a catalyst for the civil rights movement.
Yes. Yes, he was.
And some of the things that I went on to do, I became a teacher. And I graduated in 1956. I graduated cum laude.
Yes.
And I also got my master's degree from Loyola College in Chicago, University in Chicago. And that was in 1973. I spoke at all kind of places in order to raise money for the NAACP.
Yes.
And so I was laid to rest January the 6th, 2003. And it took 67 years for them to sign a bill, the Mammietil anti-lynching law.
Yes.
And I said, for my son to have died the way he did as a hero,
Yes.
that meant more to me than he would have just died.
Yes.
I have a poem that I like to share with you that was written by Doris Turner. And it's called The Whistle of Death Gave Birth to Life. A vacation of a lifetime he thought that he would have. Hanging out in Mississippi with his cousins, Emmett loved to laugh. He and his cousins made a stop in Money, Mississippi at a grocery store to purchase a few snacks. Little did Emmett know a whistle would become his last. He was abducted by two white men in the middle of the night. A woman and a few black men was outside sitting tight. 3 days later, Emmett's body was found in the Tallahatchie River with his knees pointed up. He was brutally beaten, battered, and shot. He was only a child who had a beautiful smile. They thought that his body would never be found. Three days later, like Christ, they couldn't keep him down. A 75-pound cotton gin was attached to his lifeless body with barbed wire wrapped around his neck. He could only be identified by the silver ring with the initials LT. The sheriff said, "Get that body in the ground before sundown." But his mother, Mamie, wouldn't let him be buried on Mississippi ground. I had no time to mourn. I have a job to do. Give me strength, dear Lord, to do what you want me to do. Although you lost your only son, I will make you mother of millions, and vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Amen.